Hi, everyone. Good evening, and thank you for joining us today as we celebrate Blue September 2020's final projects. I'm Tatiana, one of the technical coaches here at Makers, and tonight the Blue September cohort has 4 amazing projects to demo. For those of you who aren't familiar with Makers, Makers is a 16-week coding bootcamp, and over the course of the bootcamp, developers go from working on solidifying some coding basics to being able to build entire applications from scratch. Along the way, amongst many other things, they learn about how the web works, how to effectively learn a new programming language, and how to work in teams to deliver products following the Agile methodology. Just a few months ago, the developers you will see tonight were in their first weeks here, when they were getting to grips with classes in Ruby and practicing test-driven development. Now, they can design, build, and deploy whole products, and these are the products that you'll be seeing tonight. If you have any questions about the course, then tonight is a great time to be joining us. You can use the webinar Q&A feature to submit questions to the Makers team, and we'll be answering these questions after the student presentations. I'm really proud of the Blue September cohort. In the past 2 weeks, they've all stretched themselves, they've learned new things, and they've delivered original products, which I'm so excited that they are sharing with you tonight. Now, on to the presentations. A big welcome to our first team of the night, Catch Me. Please take it away when you are ready.
Good evening, everyone. This is the Catch Me app that we created. Our team name is also Catch Me. This is the app that keeps you running. It's an app where you race against your friends. Our team consists of Mace, Kirill, Gonzalo, and myself. The outline of the app is that players across the world can compete against each other in races of various distances, and location tracking calculates each user's distance covered during a race and determines a winner. So I'm now going to move to a YouTube demonstration of the app.
Yeah, let's have a look at how our app looks in action. So yesterday, me and Gonzalo actually went to a park and recorded the video. We're surprised to find out how well it actually worked, because it only took us 3 takes, 3 500-meter races. So on our homepage, yeah, you can see 4 options here, how to play with instructions. Then we can create, find a race, and the leaderboard. So let's go and try create race. So in this page, you can select your desired distance as well as enter your name. So yeah, we choose 500 meters and name ourselves as Luigi. And here in the lobby, I can press that I'm ready. And because I'm a host, I will be able to see the press start button, which unfortunately looks a little bit cropped. We can go ahead and start solo, but the whole point of Catch Me is that you can actually race it with your friends. So let's wait for Mario to join. Mario can use the unique lobby code that you can see on the top. Yeah, he's found it. You press ready, and now the button reappears because everybody is ready. And now we can go to the actual race. So Luigi and Mario are racing, and on the bottom of the screen, you can see the timer that helps you track your pace and let you know what score you're going to expect at the end of the race. So this app is not limited by users. We can have 1 person, you can have 10. It doesn't matter. So as long as the 2 keep running, our advanced algorithms calculate their distances, their geographical coordinates change. Update and get requests are sent back to the database and fetched back so that everybody can see everybody's live distance. So David, if you can skip over to the end of the race. So this is quite a tight one, but Luigi ends up taking it all. And as soon as he does, the app will notify him that you have finished the race. And now we just need to wait for Mario to finish. Yeah, so now it's taken to the end of the race screen, and here we can see everybody's scores, as well as some general information about the race, such as the distance, time, and the score. So we also have a leaderboard. So if you're lucky enough and fast enough to be in the global top 10, you will appear in the leaderboard, which we'll show you right now. I think it's just in a second. Yeah, so if you pause here. Yeah, so these are actually from the 10-meter race. So if you really want to get into a leaderboard, we recommend you pick that option because it's not split by distance just yet. Yeah, that's the demo over. So back to David, who's going to talk about our languages and frameworks. Thank you.
So that was the video, and I'll just go over the languages quickly. So for the back end, we used Node, we used GraphQL with the Apollo server to create an API. We used Jest to test our resolvers, SQLizer with the Postgres SQL for managing objects in the database. For the front end, we used React.js. We thought about React Native, but with a time constraint, we felt that that would be a step too far. We used the Apollo client for connecting React to the GraphQL API, and we used Cypress for testing page interaction on the front end. We also used Travis and Heroku.
Okay, I'm going to talk about our planning and workflow processes. Well, we came up with the idea, actually Kirill came up with the idea, and we agree regarding about the technologies that we wanted to use. So we were all aligned to that idea. Then we went through the user stories to get a better idea how the user is going to interact with the client, and then we decided to build an MVP. Then we diagram our classes and the tables, relational databases, how they're going to interact between each other. And then at the end, we design how the backend is going to interact with the front end and vice versa. And then regarding the research and the self-learning, we were doing both as a team and individually. And individually, when we came up with an idea, then we jump on a call and share our knowledge. And then if it was a good idea, we implemented it. And then, yeah, basically that's it regarding research. Then the meetings were structured basically at the beginning, 3 to 4 meetings a day, the very first week. And then the second week, as we already had like the baseline for the app and all the backend running, we started working more into pairs, actually, more individually as well. And then regarding the tasks, we use Trello board to split very clear the tasks that each of us needed to do. And then regarding the GitHub, we split the project into the backend into basically 2 repos, and then we were working on branches. And then once our tasks were done, we shared that, and then we reviewed them, and then we merged to the main one. So was everything accorded. And then I'm going to talk about the goals of the team. Well, we wanted to build something that we can use, and we want to use, actually, something funny at the same time. And also something important we want to use in this project was the fact that we wanted to consolidate the previous skills with JavaScript and React. And also we wanted to combine them with a new technology, such Apollo client, Apollo server, and also GraphQL. So yeah, and then finally, it was a challenge to get familiar with the geolocator tools that is provided by JavaScript, which was really good. Yeah, so for my part, that's it. Yeah.
Travis didn't pass often due to the clashes with other texts that we used. In the front end, we couldn't figure out how to use it with Cypress, as they needed to start a new server. With Zoom, the fact that we had to keep on in and out of different rooms, it caused issues and having to wait for the other person. Due to the time constraints, we split our teams, so we had a front end and a back end team. It gave us a lot of efficiency, and it enabled us to work much better with knowledge sharing. For the databases, we initially wanted SQLite, but it wasn't the best production choice for us. MongoDB wasn't available on Heroku, so we ended up sticking with Postgres. To the tracking location, we wanted to use the Google Maps API, but it actually costs money, and the amount of requests made, it would cost too much for an app like this. We ended up choosing a native JavaScript geo functionality. For testing, we started off with Jest and React testing library, but it just got a bit messy, so I ended up moving on to Cypress, which was more user-friendly. ESLint, it caused us numerous issues when pushing to our Git repos, which caused us problems with coordination in the front end with merge conflicts. For our achievements, I would say the thorough planning allowed us to jump straight into it, working on the back end and the front end simultaneously by referring to our diagrams. We built a solid back end that deployed very quickly to Heroku and didn't need any changing. We had 97.5% coverage. David and I worked on the front end without any barriers as everyone was on the same page. And as for time constraints, it enabled us to we kept a nice stable flow. We didn't have to worry about it. I think that was good. The inspiration with this app was the easeability was the Among Us. So it's easy to navigate an arcade style and no authentication, so anyone can join. And because we were making too many requests to our backend, that caused us issues. But in the end, we optimized our request cycle really well, which made the app more snappy. And David?
Yeah, we just wanted to thank our cohort because it's been great. So thank you all.
Thank you,
Thank you all.
Catch Me. Your app is really awesome. I think it's a great way to motivate all of us to get outside more, to exercise more, especially in these dark days. It allows us to connect, have friendly competition with others, no matter where they are in the world, which is a super neat idea. Now I'd like to welcome the second team of the night, the Magnificent Seven.
Good afternoon, good evening, fellow makers, most welcome guests. We are the Magnificent Seven. We are passionate about surfacing insights related to refugees because increased awareness leads to better decisions and policies. In this presentation, which you can now see, you can look forward to a demo of our amazing web app. But first, we will share an insight into our working practices, the technology we used, the reasons we made this product, and our successes and challenges. But who are the Magnificent Seven? Becca, a fashionista and now keyboard goddess. Otis, a React revolutionary. Mayara, the method maker. Christoph, the backender. And Joshua, the Google Maps genie. And me, the Versal Victor. The final piece of our puzzle is Maggie. Maggie is a product owner, activist, and concept creator of this web app, and who we have worked very closely with Maggie throughout this project. Before starting, we decided to list our common goals that we wanted to cover this project. So we wanted to create something meaningful that could potentially make a difference. That was our main goal. But inside of this, we wanted to become more confident with JavaScript and React. We wanted to have a better understanding of an API, test with Jest or Cypress. We were very keen to use Google Maps and the Google Maps API, and we wanted to explain and diagram that request response cycle of the project. I will now pass over to Otis, who will explain further.
Thank you, Tim. So the basic outline of our project is that it's a map of the world that gives users the ability to see what's going on in specific countries in terms of human rights, abuses, conflicts, or any reason why people might be seeking refuge elsewhere. And we created this project to help curb misinformation and to provide a safe platform to educate the public on global issues, as there's a severe lack of information about these issues in the media. The main focus of our project, Why Leave, is to inform people about these conflicts and issues in unrepresented, marginalized nations and countries on our planet. These issues can cause inhabitants of these countries to seek refuge in order to survive or to build better lives for themselves or their families if they didn't make their journey alone. And the reasons why people leave or flee their home countries isn't common knowledge, and the topic is filled with lots of ignorance. Phrases like, "they're just here to take our jobs," are untrue, damaging, and completely misleading. The project's idea stemmed from our ideator Maggie's personal experience working with refugees and asylum seekers understanding that there's a knowledge gap that could be filled with the tech we've learned so far at Makers. I'm now going to pass over to Becca to tell you more about the planning process.
Thank you, Otis. So after meeting with Maggie, we created a product specification, some user stories, and an MVP. We then created a beautiful wireframe with our vision using the Google Maps API, which would be an interactive map with markers that you could click on and see some information. I'm now going to hand over to Chris, who's going to talk about the stack.
Thank you, Becca. So based on the project specification, user stories, our knowledge and our goals, we decided to use something a little bit familiar for us as a backend and something more challenging as a frontend. So we chose Ruby on Rails to work as an API and to store information in a database. And with the aspect as a testing library. We use Travis as a continuous integration tool, and our backend was deployed in Heroku. Most of us wanted to learn and be more confident with JavaScript and React, so we decided to use that as a front end. And we use Cypress for testing. To place pins on the map, we use Google Map API, and CSS and the Bootstrap were used for styling. We deployed the front end to Vercel, which also worked as a continuous integration tool. I will now pass to Becca, who will tell you more about how the app evolve over the time.
So this is our first complete MVP. So it's just a picture of a map with data from one country, which the picture of the map was quite key for our MVP, which we really wanted to implement the Google Maps API. We then managed to implement the Google Maps API, and we've got an interactive marker for one country again, where if you click it, you'll see some data pulled from our API. I will now pass over to Mayara, who's going to give you a demo of our app.
All right, so there's the homepage with our map. In each marker, we have figures representing the population, the refugees, the asylum seekers, and percentage of leavers. The main content is a crisis cause. This cause describes just one of the many reasons people may be leaving. And we chose the countries with the most concerning emergency at the moment. There we have some explanation of our project. Some links to our GitHubs, then some explanation of the differences between a refugee, an asylum seeker, and a migrant. There's a link to Amnesty International as well, and some ways to support, and Maggie's website, our ideas person. And yeah, I'll pass over to Josh now.
Thank you, Mayara. We'll start off by going over a couple of the challenges that we faced. So as a big team, we found that it was hard to stay organized, and signing jobs and roles of a group of 6 people can sometimes get confusing, and not necessarily understanding how long certain tasks take, and then splitting those between each other's. Excuse me. We were not active enough when it came to merging at the beginning of the first week, which ended up leading to a bunch of problems later on into the project. And some of these were included, such as Vercel deployment and having nightmares with Travis. And also, we also had struggles with the front end testing towards the end of the project as the code got more complicated. But some of our successes were that despite the large team, we had excellent communication throughout the entire project. We were all actively jumping in and out of each other's rooms to help keep each other calm and collected, and making sure everyone was engaged and that they didn't struggle anything alone. And everyone had equal opportunity, equal responsibilities, so they felt like a key member of the team at any given time. And finally, we were able to work far beyond our original MVP. And that's the end of the presentation. So thanks for listening, everyone.
Thanks, the Magnificent Seven. I'm super inspired by your app's mission to raise awareness and reduce stigma for refugees and asylum seekers. It's also super cool to see how you really applied an iterative development process to your application, starting from an MVP and ending up with the amazing app that you have shown us today. And thank you for sharing this part of your experience with us as well. As a reminder to the audience, you can submit questions to the Makers team. There's a Q&A feature of the webinar, and we'll be answering the questions submitted there after the project presentations. So now on to our third team tonight. A warm welcome to the Excelsior team.
Thank you very much for that. So welcome everybody. We are Team Excelsior, and this is our app, Le Chicken.
So Le Chicken is the story of a chicken who dreams of stardom and goes from living at a farm to ideally at the end starring in a movie, maybe having a couple of fans. So that's the heart of the story. Other than that, it's a language learning RPG, so role-playing game, currently based in French, since that seemed to be the easiest language to start it in. It is adaptable to other languages. So if this were to progress, we could create like an Italian version or a Spanish version. The great thing about this is that it is contextual learning. So I teach English as a second language to kids who are like 5 years old upwards to adults. And when someone is trying to learn a language, it solidifies a lot more easily when they're using it in a context rather than just like a classroom setting. So here, when you're introduced to a new word, you'll get to use it right away and repetitively in that context so that you will learn it. It also does progress to become more difficult as the game would continue on. This is just a tutorial area, so the words are still pretty simple. They're infinitives, so like to walk, to hit, to jump. But as it would go on, they would learn how to construct sentences.
So initially we settled on the Unity game engine with C# for our tech stack. C# was a language that we were all interested in learning. It's a highly desirable language in the job market right now and something we were all interested in. Also, after conducting some research, we found that using Unity with C# was a path that was well trodden by novice game developers, so there were lots of resources available. And with C# and Unity, we were actually able to have our minimum viable product up and running by the end of the second day. However, we found that the power of the Unity game engine was such that we weren't actually doing an awful lot of programming ourselves, and we weren't really learning a lot of C#. What we were learning, in fact, was how to use the Unity game engine. So after a long and fractious team meeting that evening, we decided to pivot and use JavaScript, which is a language that we have some familiarity with, having learned it for the last 4 or 5 weeks. And we decided to use it with the React Native framework, which we had 2 or 3 days really experience with. So it's something we all wanted to get more familiar with, and it allowed us to really flex our programming muscles. So we use React Native with Jest and React Native testing library for the unit tests, and Cypress for the feature tests, with Expo to export it in the development environment. And although it was much harder, I think we are much prouder of the result, the product as a result.
So throughout our project, we stuck as closely as possible to the agile methodologies. So what this meant was every morning we would gather as a team. We'd check in with each other, make sure we're all doing okay. We'd look at the tasks, prioritize, work out what we needed doing in that next day or two. And then we would assign them to sub-teams and split up for the rest of the day. We'd make sure as much as possible to keep communication going throughout the day. Usually we would also have a meeting around lunchtime just to check in and make sure we can unblock any problems the other sub-teams would have. And then every evening we would then meet again as a whole and talk about how the day had gone, readjust priorities if need be, and then merge any sort of ready to go code into our finished product. The other thing we tried to do as much as possible was mix up those subteams. This is really good because it encouraged shared product ownership. It meant we all had a view of all of the code, and it encouraged learning as much as possible so we could see all the technologies in play.
We had a bit of a merge panic early on in week 2. A few of us decided we could save some time by merging some branches onto main late one night, but we ran into a really tricky bug. And after stressing ourselves out about it the entire night, it turned out to be a really easy fix the next morning as soon as we had everybody's eyes on it. So that was a big lesson in patience and making sure that everybody's on board and present whenever we made any changes to the main app. And as Charlie said, switching to React Native from Unity was a huge learning process in and of itself. None of us were hugely comfortable with React. We'd never used React Native specifically before, and we're all really proud of how much we managed to learn and what we got done with it in the 2 weeks.
So one of the biggest learnings for me throughout the project was choosing the right technology. And we've already talked about the move from Unity, but also once we'd settled on React Native, we were almost trying to bend that tool and that technology to our use state and to our idea. And I think as the project went on and we got more fluent in the language, we actually understood how the product was meant to be used and ended up having a much easier time and getting much better results out of it.
So the most important thing that I learned was how important it is to lay good foundations early on in a project. We spent some time towards the end of week 1 just reorganizing what we had into separate components with mostly single responsibilities. And that meant that in week 2, we progressed a lot faster than we thought we would, because everything was as it should be as the app gained in complexity.
As Dan mentioned earlier on, we were meeting up mornings, middays, evenings as well to check in, see how we're doing on the code. And I found this to be a very valuable learning curve because our team chemistry was on the right track. We were working really well together. We were constantly merging the code over, so we had the most up-to-date stuff, so we didn't have as many conflicts. I just felt staying on top of this meant this second week we were really calm, less stressed than we might have been, and it just made it an overall great experience.
I guess for me, one of the most important things that I learned was how important maths really is to this. So up to this point, I was able to kind of get around using a ton of maths, and my background isn't very maths based. But when we went to implement this maze feature, while conceptually and theoretically, it seems like a pretty easy thing to make, but when you have to account for different screen sizes, as well as different positionings of different objects that have to know where each other are, it gets really, really difficult. And so that's something that I definitely want to, I've learned that I want to brush up and learn further myself.
So without wishing to sound too schmaltzy, I learned the value of working in a team. Although studying on your own, you can learn things from YouTube tutorials, from documentation, you can learn syntax like that. But working with other people with different backgrounds, different strengths, knowledge bases, and different approaches to solving problems, I found really accelerated my learning and has led me to approach programming in a very different way. So I'm grateful for that.
Now on to a demo.
All right, let's turn the music on. And we can start a new game. So you see pour marcher, type marcher. So I guess that means to walk. And now we're at a door, so let's type ouvrir to open. And now we're at a maze. So if we check our dictionary, we see the directions are in there. So we'll go up, right, up, left, down, right, down, left, down, left again, up, and then now we are at our note. So we'll press to pick that up, and we will add that to our dictionary. It's a frappe, to hit. Now we are in our next scene, so it's a chicken sitting on top of our next note. So let's fight. So we see frappe, to hit. And we won. So let's take that note. It says saute, to jump. We'll add that to our dictionary and walk around. Oh, so now we're in our next battle against a fence. So if I hit that, it's gonna hurt me because it's a fence. So it keeps on hurting me. So let's type saute, to jump. And now we're out. All right,
Thank you for listening.
Thank you so much, Excelsior. I love your app idea, and I love the feel of the app. It makes learning a language look so much more fun and approachable than all the other techniques I've tried in the past. I'm really excited for this to be available on the App Store one day soon, and hopefully I'll finally be able to learn some French. Thank you so much. And please welcome the final team of the night, the London Mock Exchange.
Hello, we are the London Mock Exchange. Our app enables users to create mock portfolios in which they can buy and sell historic shares in companies and see how those investments would have fared. When we were creating our app, we really wanted to create a fun and educational platform for people who didn't have a background in finance to make investments and learn about stocks and shares without risking their own money. So here's our dev team. It's myself, Meryl, Cameron, and Ollie, but Meryl wasn't able to present today. I'm now going to demo our app for you. Okay, so you go to our website, and this is the page you see. If you want to register or not register, you can click those buttons, and we're just going to sign up and make a student. Both username and email must be unique. The passwords must match, otherwise you won't be allowed access to your account. So you log on, you go to see your portfolio page. Obviously this is a new account, so there aren't any portfolios. And so they go to make one. Your current earnings are currently 0. You go to make a new transaction and input the ticker. So here they're investing in Apple. They're going to choose 3 shares and invest in any historic date. Choose any historic date to buy those shares. And this is the sell date. And they make the trade, and that then appears on our transaction dashboard with the net earnings. When you choose the trade date, our app makes a fetch request to a market stack API, where it gets the closeout price for that company then, and it calculates the net earnings from that. So then we go back to our home screen. You can make as many portfolios as you want. So this person's going to make a holiday fund portfolio and go in there and make another trade. The trades are also unlimited. We didn't want to set a price limit because it's just meant to be fun and for people to learn and to see how trades would have fared over time. So if you invested in Facebook, you would have got 700 quid. But this person decides they don't actually like that fund and they can delete it, and it's deleted off their list. We added a news feed which fetches articles from The Guardian, and they're all finance related to help with the sort of educational side of our app so that people can learn more about stocks and shares and what's going on in the finance market at the moment. And we can log out. And this part is logging into an avid user of the app, JavaScript Fangirl. Just showing how that the data is stored for each individual person. Everyone's got their individual portfolios, and this person has portfolios with a lot of net earnings already. our app calculates the net earnings from each transaction within a portfolio to give the whole portfolio its current earnings. And there you go.
Thank you, Arabella, for that lovely demonstration. So when we set out on the project, we all had our individual objectives that we wanted to achieve, and we had to find a way to come together and sort of make them group objectives as they were. This was going to be a group project. So we came up with sort of 3 group objectives. One of them was to create a static web app where users could create stock portfolios based on historical data. Check that one, did it. The second was to learn a new language in 2 weeks. I'll get into that in the next slide. And then the final one was to finish our maker's journey with something to be proud of, be it an end product or even just 2 weeks of good fun and learning. So the technologies that we used, as I said in the previous slide, we decided that we wanted to learn a new language. The reason that we decided to build our backend API using Python and Django was because we've seen its relevance in today's job market, as well as its use in the finance industry. It's heavily relied upon. Thankfully, so we actually didn't get the chance to explore Python too much, but on the other side, we got to use Django. Django is a framework for Python, and it does do quite a lot of back-end work for you. And so where we didn't get the vanilla Python experience, we got very comfortable with using Django, which I found very useful in consolidating some of the stuff we did in the course prior to this. And then for our front end, similar to other groups, we used React and JavaScript. React, we had a chance to use a couple weeks ago during the course, but it was still quite new to our whole group. And JavaScript is one of the languages that is used regularly in the course. So we also use that one. This was one of the quotes. If anyone has pair programmed or group programmed before, it can often be difficult trying to describe where you're looking on the screen to the person who is controlling the screen. And so this is just one of those things that you find yourself saying quite a bit when you're not able to describe what you want to. Yeah, and now I'm going to pass over to Ollie to give you a bit of reflection.
Thanks, Cam. Our team processes, what were our processes? So on the first day, we created a team charter and referenced that throughout the project. This was a day spent getting the foundations right for the rest of the project. And included in that we decided to create a daily role rotation. So one day someone was the leader and the scribe, and someone else was the scribe, and then we would rotate that daily. One of the other processes we came up with was a specific blocked process. This will be, you spend 30 minutes trying to unblock something. If you couldn't do it after 30 minutes, you asked your teammates for help. And if the team couldn't unblock it after 1 hour, we would enlist the help of a coach. Another process was, although we were doing pair programming, as is often very much standard within the industry, we would, on an ad hoc basis, split the pairs to do individual learning and individual research as well. So what were the challenges? The first of the major challenges was building an API with a new language and a new framework, that being Django and Python, which we allowed ourselves a good amount of time to learn it, and we actually did have a backup plan in case we weren't able to do that as well. The second major challenge was just simply sharing knowledge, especially once again when it came to new knowledge in regards to Python and Django. But we had a good basis where all of us worked on the front end and all of us worked on the back end in various combinations of pairing. So knowledge was shared mostly that way, along with meetings in the morning and last thing before we finished for the day as well. The third major challenge was just simply following the right guides and the right resources to aid our development. You know, the right ones for the context of what we were trying to do, and try not to. We actually made a specific, purposeful decision to know when we were looking at the wrong resource and to sort of just stop wasting our time, cut that resource onto the next one. Another quote. This is a classic mistake. I'm sure we've all made it. Your server isn't running. So what did we learn? We learnt that defining clear processes, things like getting blocked and debugging, increases productivity and boosts confidence. This very much was something we, once again, decided on the first day, and it definitely served us well. If all else fails, print to the console, tighten the loop, get visibility. Can't stress the importance of this one enough, and we highly recommend it. And we learned that we now have a much stronger knowledge of React. I think that's it, actually. So thank you very much for listening. Hope you enjoyed it.
Thank you, London Mock Exchange. Thanks for sharing your reflections as well as your app with us today. It was really cool seeing your front end and back end come together this week. I know at the beginning of the week I met with you and they were two separate parts, not yet speaking together. It's a really awesome job getting those working together. You did a great job learning new frameworks and also solidifying your knowledge on React while also delivering your product this week. A huge congratulations to the entire Blue September 2020 cohort. You should all be really proud of the challenges you've taken on in the past 12 weeks and the challenges you've overcome during the bootcamp. A big virtual round of applause to all of you. And finally, I'd like to say thank you to the friends and family for tuning in tonight. I hope you've all enjoyed the presentations and I hope you all have a great weekend. I'm now going to hand over to Haley. We're going to have a half-hour Q&A to answer the questions that have been submitted.
Cool, thank you very much, Tatiana. And hi everyone, thank you for joining us for our last demo day of 2020. It's been really great hosting these across the year and just seeing how the cohorts have adapted so well to kind of learning online and all of the challenges that this year has thrown up. So it's a massive kudos to our students for all the work they've put in this year. So in this section, we're going to take about half an hour to answer any of your questions if you're interested in learning with us next year. So joining me on the call, obviously we've got Tatiana, who is one of the coaches at Makers, and we've also got Rachel, who is one of our course managers. So I'm just going to start with the questions that have been submitted. If you see a question that you also want to ask, if you could just use like the thumbs up button to upvote it so we can answer the kind of most wanted questions first, or if not, just submit your own question and we'll get to them. Cool, so I'm going to start off with the top question, which is asking about the curriculum. So hello, an inquiry about the curriculum and mainly the schedule of the pre-course, please. Yeah, sure. Tatiana, would you be able to help with that at all?
Yeah, definitely. So our curriculum at Makers is revolved around kind of skills and behaviors that we see that successful developers have. And so along the way, you learn lots of really useful concepts. So we start out kind of after the pre-course in the full-time bootcamp, we start out with test-driven development, which is a practice widely used across the industry. We cover object-oriented principles, and then we learn about the web, building our first web apps, and adding databases onto those. After this, the students learn a new language, and this is done through JavaScript. The kind of first 4 weeks are focused in Ruby. And they not only learn JavaScript, but also learn the skills about how to learn a new language. So they are therefore ready to learn any new language, no matter what language their role requires. And there are also some project weeks. So for example, the final projects are the 2 weeks at the end of the 16-week bootcamp, but there are also a couple of other projects along the way. I can also talk a bit about the pre-course. So the pre-course is a 4-week pre-course. It's part-time. There are materials that we kind of suggest you follow with challenges that we ask you to solve, and you kind of have a community to help you, and you can build off of each other's knowledge for everyone in the cohort working the pre-course. Do you want to add anything, Rachel?
I think, yeah, it's just in order to sort of get everybody ready, isn't it, to on the same level, so that when you start sort of the full-time course, everybody has an understanding of, I think they cover like the Git and command line, so like some key things that you'll be needing for the full-time part of the course. But yeah, I think that's everything.
Cool, thank you both. So the next question is asking about diversity. So they've asked, how are you making sure your programs include a diverse range of people? I'll answer that first and then kind of move on to the second section of the question, because it's a little bit of a different theme. So diversity is something that kind of Makers has always cared a lot about, and we've launched a couple of programs at the end of this year, which will be carrying us all the way through 2021 as well. So it's called the Represent program, and we've partnered with a couple of coding groups who work to diversify the tech industry. So what we'll be doing through that program is offering 6 free places to members of Coding Black Females. If you're not a member, you can sign up and apply through them. There'll also be discounts as well as the free places. So if you don't get one of those, do still register your interest, and hopefully that will still help you towards a place on the course. And a similar program we have running is with our partner CodeBar. Again, they work with underrepresented groups in tech, and it's the exact same arrangement with that group. What I'll do is I can drop a link in the chat in just a moment, and that will show you how you register if you want to get information about those things. Something else that I'm forgetting. Oh, we also have a discount for women and gender minorities, which is constantly running and will automatically be applied to your application. The second half of the question was asking about the languages that you need when joining the course. So they've said, I saw on the website that you recommend prospective students should learn Ruby or know a little programming if they're considered for a place. Should students be fluent in foundational languages like HTML and CSS before they apply? Rachel, could you take us through that one, please?
Yeah, I could definitely, yeah, so we ask you to look at Ruby just because it is one of the main languages that you'll use on the course and in the pre-course. But actually I might pass over to Tatiana about whether it is HTML, CSS is needed or whether it's not.
Yeah, so in the 3rd week of the full-time course, as I mentioned, we cover an intro to kind of web apps, and that's when HTML and CSS are used for kind of the first time in the course. Really, you're not expected to be any sort of expert in HTML and CSS. There are lots of really great resources out there with HTML and CSS, and one of the skills that you will learn through the course is kind of how to research and find those resources effectively for yourself. So you're absolutely not required to be an expert in those before joining the course.
Cool, thank you both. The next question is very kind of similar to this one. So they're asking what other kind of pre-skills are required to take up the software development course. Maybe Rachel, if you could maybe talk a little bit about, what resources we recommend and that kind of thing.
Yeah, definitely. So yeah, Makers is designed for people that are sort of career changing. So we don't expect you to have, done months and months of programming or done like a course at university or anything like that. But we do ask you to have a look at a couple of Ruby resources. So the first one is Code Academy has a Learn Ruby course on there. It gives you like a basic overview of the language, and that's the first place I would sort of direct people, especially if you haven't sort of coded before, or even if you have and you're wanting to explore Ruby, checking out that course on Code Academy. your first course on there should be free if you sort of haven't done any other of their other courses. So that's a good place to start. And the second thing that we sort of ask people is to have a look at Code Wars, which is a platform which has katas on, which are like coding challenges. You can do them in all sorts of different languages, but we ask you to have a look at some Ruby katas on there. They're graded, so they're different levels, so you can filter for level 8s, which are the easier katas, and we want you to work through quite a few katas to get to 100 honor on there. These resources are going to introduce you to Ruby, and they're also going to prepare you for your pairing session or your interview with makers, and help prepare you for the course. So yeah, those are a couple of the resources. I'm sure we can send them on after this so that you can have links to them, but those are the ones that I would sort of suggest. There are lots of other resources, but we tend to not want to overload you with too many, but do reach out if you've already done those and you're looking for like other resources to help.
Thank you. Lovely. So the next question is about apprenticeship opportunities. So they're asking, is there a prospect of an apprenticeship being available in 2021? And would this be a safer option than taking part in the bootcamp course due to the difficulty in potentially finding a job, essentially? Cool. So we do have an apprenticeship that's going to be opening. I believe it'll be running from February next year. One thing to be aware of is that, I mean, everything is remote currently, but the company that's running with is going to be based in Blackpool. So please only apply to that if you'll be able to kind of like reach that location, when it does come to being on site. Also, if I'm right, it's not a standard software development apprenticeship. It's a slightly different skill set. But what I can do, I'm going to drop the link for you now, once again, in the chat. And if you want to register your interest, then that would be the best place so you can find out kind of if it works for what you're looking for. In terms of, is it a safer option? I don't think so. I think it's just a slightly different thing. We've definitely seen kind of hiring has picked back up, and people are getting jobs. So obviously still there is a risk with coronavirus, but yeah, I wouldn't kind of base your decision like necessarily on that, but probably worth registering to find the information on it, and then you can kind of compare and see which works for you. Rachel and her team can also talk about like the differences with you as well. Is there anything I'm missing on that, Rachel, or are they the kind of main details?
Yeah, to my knowledge, like the applications are not open currently. We do have like a pool of applicants that are probably going to be used to select for like the February start date. But I think the link that you've sent, you can pop your email in there, and then if applications do open up or opportunities do become available, that's how we're going to notify people. So please, if you're interested in the apprenticeship, put your email in there. It's likely the apprenticeships will be later on in the year that you might have sort of the chance to sort of get onto.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you. And the next one kind of follows on from there, just asking if we envisage the job market kind of growing after COVID. As I say, from what we've seen, it's already kind of like picking back up. Obviously you have to see what next year has in store, but yeah, like it's definitely kind of like moving in the right direction from kind of what we've seen so far. Okay, next question from Rose is asking, what does the average week look like whilst taking part on the bootcamp? Tatiana, would you be able to help with that, please?
Yeah, definitely. So like I mentioned, there are kind of two different weeks. There are weeks that are focused on particular objectives, and then there are project weeks, which are also focused on objectives, but you'll be working with a group of people from your cohort trying to deliver a product at the end of the week or at the end of the 2 weeks. So for the non-project weeks, usually we'll have a kickoff on Monday, talk through what the goals are for the week with the coach and the entire cohort. And then we'll have about 1 to 2 workshops where we'll demonstrate skills that are key, or also talk about concepts. and you'll have a chance to work on some things in smaller groups with the other students from the cohort. In the afternoons, there are afternoon challenges where you'll be pairing with another member from your cohort. Those afternoon challenges are specifically designed to help practice those skills and build off of each other every single day, so that by the end of the week, you should feel much more confident with those weekly goals that were set on Monday. Other things to note is on the mornings when there aren't workshops, there are practicals as well as other exercise that you can work on independently or form groups with within the cohort and work. Again, all of those things are aimed at achieving all of those goals that were set on Monday. And then on Friday, we have a retro as a cohort, which is a chance for us to all get together, reflect on how the week went, and maybe pull out any actions for next week.
Cool, thank you, Tatiana. The next question I think was aimed for the students, but it'd be good to kind of understand more about why the students, pick the languages they do. They're asking, was any team interested in using Java, and what kept them away from using? Oh, sorry, and what kept you away? What kept you away from when deciding that? Okay, cool. So basically, what languages were they considering? You tell us a bit more about that one, please.
Yeah, so in final projects, the teams have absolute autonomy when deciding what their tech stack is going to be. And so often teams will decide based on what languages they are interested in learning. There are some languages which are more widely used in certain industries versus in others. It kind of depends on what people's interests are. And there definitely have been teams that use Java for their final projects in the past. Just happened that in this cohort, there wasn't.
Cool, thank you. So next question from Mike is asking if you can still work on the side during the pre-course, Rachel.
Yeah, Mike, you can still work during the pre-course, but we would suggest only sort of like part-time hours, not trying to work like a full-time job alongside the pre-course. So the pre-course would require about 20 to 25 hours per week. And just to answer one of the next ones, you can do it in your own time. There's no set schedule. There aren't workshops during the pre-course, but it is part of the course. Everybody that does, for example, the pre-course in January will join the full-time course in February. You can't do them sort of separately. And yeah, it's all part of the course. So yeah, hopefully that answers the question.
Just to add on to that, there are no set times and you can definitely work independently, but coaches are available on weekdays between 9:30 and 12:30. Those are kind of the core coaching hours at Makers. And if you kind of want to get in touch with a coach or have a meeting with a coach, it would be in those times.
Cool, thanks guys. I think we did about 4 questions in one there, so I like this efficiency. Cool, so the next one is asking if you can apply now for an April-May cohort if you feel ready. Rachel.
Yeah, so we normally open sort of like 3 cohorts, and our January one has sort of just filled. So we've currently got February and March open. I think we're just finalising the date for the April one, so that's why that one's not currently on the website. Just keep an eye out. In January, we should release that. You can still apply now. You can select March and just write in your motivation letter that you're interested in April, for example, and then you can get started with the resources and be in contact with us. That's not a problem. We can change the date when we have the cohorts available, really.
Cool, thanks, Rachel. And just to kind of tag on to that one, there's another question asking the schedule for next year. If you click on the apply button on the website, as Rachel mentioned, that it will show the next couple of cohorts available. So that won't start your application, but that's where you can go to see the info. Cool, so the next one is asking, can you explain the selection process for prospective students?
Yeah, I'll take this one. So I guess, yeah, the first thing that we would advise is like coming along to events like this. And if you're interested, there's just an online application form. It's just a couple of pages. Within that, we ask you to fill out like a motivation letter. To take, 5 minutes. You don't need to spend hours and hours on it, but it's good for us to know sort of like what coding you might have tried in the past, or whether you're a complete beginner. Just tell us a little bit about yourself and where you're at with your coding journey, and perhaps why you sort of want to come to Makers. It's good for us to know if you've done any research, if you've been on our blog. There's lots of information that you can have a look at before applying. Once you apply, we have a look at your application, and we aim to sort of call people within sort of a couple of days. We like to speak to you in person just to chat through your application, and also tell you about sort of the next steps. The next step after that is doing like a coding challenge. We want to see that you've picked up some basic skills. So you'll complete a coding challenge. If we think you're ready, we'll offer you a space. If we don't think you're quite ready yet, we'll get you to do another sort of coding challenge. So those Ruby resources that I explained earlier are going to help prepare you for that coding challenge, as well as sort of starting the course. And that's the process, really, just an online application and then a phone call with us, and you'll complete a coding challenge.
Cool, thank you, Rachel. And I'm just dropping a blog post that Rachel's actually written, kind of explaining that in the chat. So if you want to kind of go over any of those details, just take a look in your own time. Lovely, so we've got two more to finish out today. So the next one is asking, what's the main difference between the Makers Bootcamp and the other ones on the market, and why this bootcamp would be a better choice, I guess, over the others. I guess it'd be good to kind of hear everyone's opinion. I know from my perspective, when we're asked this, firstly, our alumni community is kind of a little bit of a secret weapon, I think, in terms of the tech industry. Makers was the first kind of bootcamp to be in London. We've been here for kind of over 7 years now. And so a lot of the people who trained with us back then are now in, hiring positions. They know Makers. We've got like an established name in the industry. So in terms of like long-term job hunting and mentoring and all of that kind of thing, there's a real base for you there. And so many people find, first jobs, second jobs, third jobs, like through that community. So you can't have that unless obviously you're part of it. As well as that, our coaching team have all been professional developers before working at Makers. They've worked at, trying to think of some of the companies, Deloitte, Facebook, Santander, all really big name companies. And so I know at some of the boot camps, I think some of the graduates then become the coaches, which is fine, but I think it's great that our coaches come with, so much industry experience. They've been in the position where like, they've been a junior, so they can kind of coach you through those things as well. So yeah, that's what I would say. Tatiana, how about you?
Yeah, I think I completely agree with all of those things. I think also, I can't speak for other boot camps. I haven't necessarily checked out their curriculum and so on. But at Makers, we have a real emphasis on kind of helping you learn how to learn. And so you can therefore in the future bootstrap your own future. So you will leave the bootcamp feeling confident with not just the skills that you have covered, but also feeling confident that, I can tackle anything in the future. I can learn anything that I need to for any job. And I'm not just limited to like exactly what the course has taught me. Obviously, I'm not saying that's not necessarily the case in other bootcamps, but I think that's really something we emphasize at Makers.
Rachel, anything to add at all on that one?
Yeah, I think, we have like a great emphasis on like student sort of like well-being and sort of the non-technical aspect as well. I think you gain a lot of skills that, wouldn't be classed as technical, but you need to have those great communication skills, collaboration skills, which is why we have like the group projects, but also the chance for you to do like individual stuff at the weekends as well, so that you can sort of add to your portfolio. And yeah, I think the career support is a great service. I think we're not here just to train you, or the coaches aren't here just to train you. We also want to help you get into that sort of first role as a developer. So yeah, I think, we help you hopefully from the beginning all the way through to that sort of first role.
Yeah, definitely. And I think like just adding to what Tatiana said, like, we're not necessarily here to convince you to come to Makers. It's very much about kind of, you know, looking at the other schools and seeing like where you're comfortable, because, you know, you'll know how you learn better than any of us ever do. So as much as like, you know, if you do come to us, then we hope that we can support you. But yeah, definitely do your homework, because everyone has got their strengths in kind of like different ways. Cool, so we're on the last question for the last demo day of 2020. So they're asking, do we envisage the course being back on site at all in 2021? Yes is the short answer. Obviously, we're kind of keeping up to date with the government announcements. You know, it'll only ever be like when things are kind of safe. I think we're keeping our fingers crossed for sort of like April or May time, but you know, please don't take that as gospel. It will just be, you know, when we've heard the guidelines can allow us to do so. So that's everything. I'm going to answer this final question from Diego asking, they've almost finished free code camp. Is it worth trying? Is it worth going for a boot camp? I guess it depends. I'm not familiar with the resource. Like, Rachel, do you know much about it?
I'm happy to offer my perspective. So I think, you know, essentially there's so many amazing resources out online. You can, with enough kind of motivation and time, you can learn anything. I think one thing that a boot camp offers you is like a really amazing community and peers to learn from, as well as the opportunity to work in real kind of team engineering projects, which is what you will be doing as an engineer. I think that's kind of a, you know, long gone are the days of an engineer sitting in a basement alone in a week and just coding in their entire time. You're part of a team. You need all of those communication skills, as well as the practical skills of like using Git in a team. And I think that can be hard to, not impossible, but more difficult to recreate outside of a bootcamp context.
Cool, that's great. Thanks so much. And we don't have any more questions. So that's it, we're done for today. Thank you all for joining us. And yeah, we really hope that we'll see some of you in 2021. I know there's gonna be lots of exciting things happening. So we will see you, we'll see you then. Okay, bye.